Hi everyone, it is vlog day, and this one's going to be honestly a little bit of a doozy. I know that my 2019 year in review is a little bit late coming, but it's not because I didn't want to tell you about how hard my 2019 honestly was for me. I think you can probably tell that from a lot of the other videos that I've put out recently where I've been ranting, but it was more because I've been waiting to tell you about how hopefully amazing my 2020 is going to be. While I am usually a good news first, bad news second kind of girl, I'm too excited, and I think you can probably tell from my thumbnail and from the title in this video, but I want to share today that I am finally pregnant. Yay! Oh my God, it has been a really long, hard road getting to this place right now. And I have fantasized about making this video right here for you for so long because it's meant that I am out of the first trimester, miscarriage pending hell that I have been living in for legit the last year. But I am just so excited to tell you that I'm finally on the road to becoming a mom of two, which is a little bit overwhelmingly insane for me. Now, of course, the purpose of today's video is not just to share my exciting news with you, but also because I want to tell you about my infertility journey. Not for sympathy, of course, but really just because nobody ever talks about this. And yet as many as 1 in 8, or even some people, some scholars have estimated 1 in 6 couples will struggle with infertility at some point in their life. And the fact that nobody's talking about this just makes us feel so much more alone. So I really want to bring you in to this experience with me so that if you yourself are struggling, you don't have to do it alone. So that was my first pregnancy. Everything went pretty smooth sailing after that. Then when my son turned 1, I weaned. I was actually exclusively pumping at the time breast milk for my son, and I stopped just after he turned 1 because you can't breastfeed while doing IVF, and then I immediately went back into IVF. And so our first cycle was unfortunately canceled right at the end, right before transfer, because there was fluid kind of trapped in my lining, which was so devastating in itself because so many drugs and hormones and money and emotions and time goes into this. So it is really truly horrible when the whole thing gets scrapped and you're excited and it's over. Then my next cycle, we managed to get my lining to 6 millimeters, which was really good by my body's standards. That embryo took, the pregnancy took. I got to 6.5 weeks, and then I woke up in the morning on a Saturday morning. We were going to go have a fun day at the farm that day with some other families, and I woke up to just being soaked in my own blood. So that was really traumatic. I then had to go and entertain like 3 or 4 other families and all these kids and adults and pretend like nothing was going on, even though I didn't really know what was going on because it was just too early for us to be able to confirm anything. And it was a weekend. It's always bad timing, of course, for a miscarriage, but yeah, that was a rough day. Interestingly, talk about maternal intuition. The night before I miscarried, I was out for dinner with my husband at one of our favorite restaurants, and we did like a little cheers with my non-alcoholic drink, whatever that was, to my pregnancy, that I was pregnant. And I remember thinking in my head, not out loud because I didn't want to sound crazy, but thinking in my head, I don't think I am pregnant. I just had this feeling. And then a few days later, like on Monday or Tuesday, when I was able to come in for an early ultrasound, we were able to confirm that, yes, I did lose that pregnancy. So the next cycle came and we tried again. Another 6mm lining, feeling good. That's good for me. Another positive pregnancy test. I was so amazingly excited. We felt like this is it, you know, we had our loss, but like this one's for realsies. And then I remember that weekend, my husband and I took my son to the science center, and we were walking around the science center, and I just was doubled over in such excruciating lower back pain that I could barely move. And I told my husband, and he was like, yay, like that's a pregnancy sign, right? Great, like must be a strong pregnancy. It's already kicking the shit out of you. And I was just like, no, I don't think this is good. I don't think this is normal. I don't think this is a pregnancy symptom. I think this is a miscarriage symptom. And I was right. We were able to go in the next day for another test, and it confirmed that again, I did lose that pregnancy as well. And it was just a few days before we were supposed to all take off on our big Italy trip, which I talked about in that video. So you can watch that, of course. But yeah. So we decided to kind of take a breather, take a break while we were in Italy. We had done like back-to-back cycles. And we thought, let's just take a break, reset, try to enjoy ourselves, try to, like I really needed to get my sleep back under control from all the stress and anxiety of what I had been going through, but I needed a hard reset. That was our goal. And then while we were away, because I hate the idea of feeling like I'm just not doing anything to move forward. That to me is just so stressful. I'm not very good at sitting still in general in life, especially when it comes to something that I really truly want. So while we were away, we decided to genetically test all of our embryos, which we had opted not to do in the beginning when we first did IVF, and we froze them and we you know did the first retrieval and everything, because my doctor suggested we didn't need to, and she thought it was unnecessary, and the risks did not outweigh the benefits to her, so we opted not to. I really regretted that, because this whole time we were all thinking, is there something, like, are we choosing bad embryos every single transfer? Is that why they're resulting in these early losses? But anyways, what that meant was that we had to thaw the embryos, then biopsy them. They take some cells off the end of the outside of the embryo, and then freeze them again, which does come with a lot of risk of damaging the embryos. And also it was an expensive procedure to do after the fact. So had I known that, I would have really just PGS tested or genetically tested those embryos from the get-go. So when I returned from Italy, we found out that amazingly, all of our embryos came back as genetically normal, which is amazing, but also very rare considering I had so many. I actually, in the beginning I had 12. I think at this point I had 8 or something like that. So that was really awesome. But what that told us was that it's very likely that the lining and the thin lining was the reason I was not being able to sustain a pregnancy. So my doctor suggested a new protocol that basically would stimulate me to create my own estrogen, hoping that would create a more favorable environment for to grow my lining. This was a really long, painful, brutal cycle because there were a lot more drugs. In fact, they were all injectable drugs, which sucks. I was in there literally every single day for about a month doing blood work, ultrasound. I would be waiting there for 1 or 2 hours to speak to the nurse afterwards. And then I'd wait around all day, twiddling my thumbs, just I wonder what she's gonna say, wonder what the doctor wants me to do, waiting for a call from my nurse or doctor to let me know next steps. This went on for weeks. It was emotionally and physically exhausting and so all-consuming. This was the rock bottom of my sleep as well, because it was so hard for me. And eventually, after weeks of this, my doctor she called me up and she was like, I'm really sorry, but I think we should pull the plug on this one. And at this point, she didn't even really know where to go next with me other than to like, let's just try it again. But I didn't want to put myself through the emotional and physical torture that I was doing every single cycle without any kind of promise that anything was going to be different. Not to mention, I was just blasting through all of my good embryos, and eventually they would run out, and then I would be left with nothing. So she referred me to speak to the head of our clinic, Dr. Hannum, about surrogacy and what that would look like. Because if I couldn't get my lining to thicken, but my embryos were really good, then maybe it would be best for me to transfer my embryos into another woman who could actually get her lining to thicken and sustain a pregnancy. Now, I have to be totally honest that the idea of surrogacy at first really was so scary. It meant giving up my sense of control, and also it felt like a real, true sense of failure to me when I already kind of felt like I was failing nonstop. But I went to that meeting feeling like I'm eager to get moving on next steps, because I know and I knew from what I'd read online and from talking to other people that the surrogacy journey can be a really long one. So I didn't want to waste any time just like, you know, twiddling my thumbs or worrying about what that was going to look like, or wondering if should I do it, should I not. So I thought knowledge is power, let's go get that knowledge. So in my meeting with Dr. Hannum, it was quite amazing. He sat down with me for over an hour to walk me through like all the potential issues that could be going on. We agreed that obviously, as via, PGS told us that my embryos were probably not the problem, but that it was very likely a lining thickening issue, and possibly, though not confirmed, some kind of immune issue as well. So there was that. Now, while I am obviously all for evidence-based practice, he asked me at this meeting if I was willing to go into, uncharted, untested, kind of wooey granola territory, so to speak, with him. And at that point, I was willing to do legitimately anything. So I was like, yes, take me. I'll do whatever you say I should do. So we decided to give it one last shot, agreeing that if this did not work, that we would need to be looking more seriously at surrogacy options. And this time we added a whole bunch of other more experimental drugs and procedures to my already very complicated regime. And if you're interested in hearing more about my protocol and about the legitimate miracle experimental procedure that actually got me pregnant, leave me a comment below and I will do a whole other video on my protocol so you can see exactly what I did to get me pregnant and keep me pregnant. But anyways, in short, this procedure that he wanted me to go through had been done experimentally on 8 people, anecdotally in his clinic, nowhere else in the world. And there were no studies to back it up, no information about this online because he literally made it up. And I was about to sign up to be participant number 9. Anyways, to skip to the punchline, I managed to get my lining to 8 millimeters, which was way thicker than my thickest at 6 millimeters. So honestly, I was in absolute awe. I was so shocked. This crazy thing that my doctor just made up actually worked. So we did the transfer a week later. I got a positive pregnancy test and everything was looking amazing. That is until Christmas Eve. So the night before Christmas Eve, I started to have these like really terrible lower back pains, and like it was so bad that I could barely move or walk for very long. I had to like lay down. I was just in agony. So Christmas Eve morning, of course, I was so worried that, these are the pains that I have basically every single time I miscarry. So I called my nurse and I told her, I was like, I'm having these pains. I'm really worried. This is what's happened to me before. She was like, no, like she assured me everything's fine. Everything's normal. That's like a pregnancy symptom. It's not a big deal. Go enjoy your holiday. It's good. Literally an hour after I get off the phone with my nurse, I go to the washroom and there's blood in my underwear. And like, not just like a little bit of spotting, which can be very normal in early pregnancy, but like a big gush of blood. So of course I'm terrified and I start having like PTSD of my previous miscarriages, and I call my nurse back and I'm crying, and she's like, okay, come in. We'll do an ultrasound, we'll do another blood test, we'll make sure everything's okay. Don't worry until we see what's going on. So I legitimately run down to the clinic. Thankfully it's relatively close, but I ran, and I was only 5 weeks along at that point. So, it's too early to see a heartbeat to really truly confirm anything. But they were able to see a gestational sac and able to see a yolk sac, which is great and what you would expect to see at 5 weeks. And they were able to see a subchorionic hematoma, which is like a little bruise next to the uterus, which can cause these scary bleeds. So they were like, see, it's fine. It's just a subchorionic hematoma. You're good. Go enjoy Christmas. And that was reassuring to me. Like those were all good things to see, but I still wanted to have the blood test to prove to myself, like in numbers and like quantifiable numbers, that everything was still rising at the rate that it's supposed to. So we did the blood test, but of course, it's Christmas Eve, and I'm supposed to fly to Florida Christmas Day, and all the nurses go home early on Christmas Eve. Normally they still stay till 3, and therefore they would have been able to call me with my results, but they all left at noon, and so nobody called me with my blood test results before they all left for the holidays, and they were gone the next day, Christmas Day as well. So noon comes, I don't get a call, and I start freaking out. I run down to my local kind of Life Labs lab, and I had my doctor, my actual family doctor, fax in a requisition there. So I was like, I've got to get another test there because I know at least they post the results by the end of the day. So I go and get another blood test for the same thing. I get my blood drawn at the clinic, and I basically wait. So I'm like obsessively checking the results every single 5 minutes from like 12 o'clock until I go to bed, waiting for the results pending to be updated with an actual number. And meanwhile, I'm so like flustered by all this, plus the fact that like it's Christmas Eve. I have to get up in the morning and do Christmas morning with my family, and then we fly to Florida, so there's traveling involved. I'm so flustered that I accidentally took the 2 pills that I had set out for myself that are supposed to be taken as a vaginal suppository. Like, I consumed them. I took them with the rest of my supplements. And when I realized this, I totally freaked out. Like, oh no, like what am I supposed to do now? Like, should I take 2 more, but the right way as a vaginal suppository? Should I just not worry about it? Did I totally fuck everything up? Like, of course, at that point, I'm frantically emailing everyone on my team, everyone at the clinic, my doctor, my nurse, my previous doctor, my previous nurse team, after hours nurses. Nobody's getting back to me because it's Christmas freaking Eve. And then I try my mom groups, I talk to my naturopath, and basically we decide that the best course of action is for me to take 1 more as a vaginal suppository, in addition to the 2 that I consumed orally, hoping that this somehow would kind of equal out the same absorption amount. Anyways, I digress. Knowing that I had such a busy day the next day with Christmas and flying, I eventually just like passed out and fell asleep. I woke up at 12:05 to pee, and as I'm peeing, I had this thought, I wonder if the lab has posted my results online yet. So basically, the number that I needed based on my calculations of a healthy HCG progression for my pregnancy, where I was at, was 8,700. When I looked at the number online at 12:05 on Christmas Day, the number was 7,000. So I was totally crushed. I knew I was having a miscarriage. I was losing this pregnancy on Christmas Day. And I was so devastated because I was really excited for this to be our Christmas miracle, you know, our story. I was so excited to tell everyone on Christmas Day, both of our families, that we were having another baby after all that we'd been through. But instead, I was going to have to tell them this really disappointing, sad news. And then only to come home from my holiday that I was definitely not going to enjoy because I was so stressed out, to have to find a surrogate and start this whole brutal process all over again. Not to mention, I was literally just about to fly to the States where none of my doctors had any orders or any authority to prescribe me something in the event that I needed something to kind of progress this miscarriage along. Basically, I know with my summer miscarriage that I had to take these pills to help me expel the excess tissue. And even here in Canada, where abortion is very much legal, it was really hard to actually get my hands on this prescription that I got. I had to go to several pharmacies, and one pharmacist actually told me the reason why it was so hard to get them nowadays was because people were buying them and then trying to sell them on the black market in the United States, where they were unavailable. So that was like really scary shit. And I was going to Florida, so I was worried. Anyways, getting heated here. My beta was low, you know, I was miscarrying, Christmas was ruined, etc. So I woke up my husband after I saw this number and I was hysterically crying. I cried all night long. Obviously my insomnia remedies were not going to help me at that point, but we made the decision to kind of change our flight, cancel our flight, fly out after Boxing Day so that we could go see our doctor and nurse on Boxing Day morning to determine next steps and also any drugs that I might need to help support the miscarriage over when I was away on my trip. And when I walked into the clinic that morning to see my nurse, she was like, well, yeah, like everything looks great. Beta was 8,900. Yeah, perfect. Enjoy your holiday. And I was like, what? How can that be? How can the numbers be so different? They were taken this exact same day. And she was like, oh, you can't compare. That's like comparing apples to oranges. You can't compare results from different labs because we use different solvents to process the blood. So you need to always compare apples to apples, blood taken from the same lab in order to have accurate analysis and results. I was totally shocked. In other words, I was still pregnant. I was still like very pregnant, perfectly pregnant. It literally felt like an actual Christmas miracle. So after that, we landed in Florida and it had just rained. And I went down to the beach right when we got there and I looked up at the sky and there was the most amazing full rainbow. Actually, it was actually a double rainbow. That's how incredible it was. And I thought, yes, the storm is over. This is it. This is my rainbow. I am on the other side. And that brings me here. You know, I've had multiple weekly ultrasounds because I've been kind of high risk when I was both in Florida and then when I got back to Toronto, and everything is measuring perfectly. I just did the early genetic screening test. It's a blood test, so I'm awaiting those results, and next will be the anatomy scan. And yes, I obviously will be super anxious and nervous until this baby is out into the world and is proven to be healthy and well. But my mama gut is really telling me and assuring me that this one is for keeps. I have also been pretty nauseous this pregnancy and crazy tired, but I just got to wean off prednisone and just finished my estrogen this morning. And I've got 1 or 2 more days of progesterone. So I am already feeling so much better now that I'm getting off of all the drugs. But my due date is August 23rd. So this baby is going to be either a Leo or a Virgo, right on the cusp. And I don't really know that much about either of these zodiac signs. So if you are a Leo or a Virgo and you want to fill me in, please leave me a comment below. I want to be prepared for what I've got in store. My son is an Aries and I'm a Sagittarius, if that makes any difference. Also, we are not going to find out the sex, which I know you guys guys are gonna probably think I'm crazy, but we didn't find out with my son, and it was a real source of excitement in the delivery room, so we're gonna hold off on that. The only really big disadvantage of that is that it means we have to fight over a boy name and a girl name. I feel strongly about my girl pick, but boys' names are so hard. We didn't even have a boy name for my son until he was born. And if you guys have any really cool, super unusual, super unique names for boys that you want to suggest to me, please leave me a comment below. I need all the help that I can get because I'm just obsessing over it already, and it's tough. But my son has a very unusual name, and I want to make sure that we stay in that vein. But boy or girl, whatever they're called, I am just so excited for the new baby to meet Big Boy E. I guess he's graduating from Baby E, so I don't know how he's gonna feel about that, but that's what's happening. But to close off this long-winded video, I guess aside from telling my trolls not to body shame me as I get bigger, because hey, I am growing a human, I just want to kind of give some hope to those of you who may be struggling to grow your family. I know how absolutely soul-crushing and devastating this process is, regardless of where you are in your journey or what road or route you've decided to take. It is so hard. In fact, I read somewhere that the anxiety and feelings of depression from infertility are comparable to those of getting a cancer diagnosis. So just to put into perspective, I feel you. But what I want you to know is if you are in fact struggling, please do not hesitate to reach out. I read all your comments, I read your DMs, I do respond. Reach out to me, I want to help support you. Also, if you have any questions or topics that you want me to explore in more detail as part of my Fertility Files series here, so if we're talking about infertility or IVF, miscarriage, pregnancy, breastfeeding, supplements, drugs, anything, I am fair game to spill the tea, so to speak, and at least tell you about my experience and also tell you what the research says. So please do not hesitate to leave a comment. I'm sure I will be doing a lot more videos like this as I progress through the weeks and months of this amazing thing called pregnancy. I still am not even quite in belief that this is happening. But I'm sure once I feel baby kicking, it'll all be a little more real. On that note, friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked this video, please be sure to give it the thumbs up. Leave me a comment below. There's so many things that I want your feedback on, so please do not hesitate. Also, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time on Abby's Kitchen. Bye!